Kia ora, Jade Varapana-Binioni here. I am running this small series designed to build resilience. This is a topic. Resilience is a topic that is important to me because, looking back on everything that I have built and achieved for myself, it really came down to building the internal resilience to make choices, communicate boundaries. That's something we're going to talk about in this particular video. It all came down to making different choices, and to make different choices and communicate in new ways, it took resilience. So in oh wait, look at that. It's not presenting. It's not very flash of me. Let me just sort this out. I'm not going to start all over again. That will be annoying. So let's do that. Cool. That's a little bit better. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you all about boundaries. And specifically, we're going to follow the structure. What, why, and how. Because I presume, if I'm listening to a YouTube video, or if I'm taking the time to watch something, I want to know, I want to understand it, I want to get the context, I want to know, I want to know about it so that I can understand how to implement it in my life. And over the last 7 years of, my journey of being out there, being a coach, being a mentor to others, that's really what it's been about. It's just been about understanding what I want to fill my baskets with, and learning about them in a way that I can implement them in my life. So let's move first into the what. What is a boundary? I'm going to share a story, so don't worry if you don't get this line, but it's about communicating what you're available for. We are us, and there is many different people that come into our world, into our lives. And one of the ways that I had it described to me at a retreat that I was at was one of the brothers, Tom, was describing how a boundary was explained to him, and I'm kind of going to pass that on with my own flavor. But imagine seeing our hearts, right, as this garden, and this beautiful garden, like back home in Aotearoa, New Zealand, where I'm from. There are these gardens called the Hamilton Gardens, and they're beautiful to go and have a look at. They're just, I've had many events there. Not me personally, anyway, getting off track, but they're just beautiful gardens. And I want you to picture this garden. Like, this is what our hearts look like. Is, it's full of desire, it's full of passions, it's full of color, it's full of beautiful scents, like that, just a space that lights up our senses. And this garden, we don't want it to be closed off, just like the Hamilton Gardens. As I said, like, I've had many events there, or that I've attended there. And I even ran one of my best friends, what do you call it? Bridal party, bridal shower, her bridesmaids party, whatever you call those. I held it there, and because it was just so beautiful, and it was an open space, and I kind of just decided to set things up in a space where, I knew other people would be coming in, and because it was an open space, but there was enough space for them to like come in, but also like see that there was something personal going on, and kind of just like go around. There was enough space. And so this is where I'm getting at with this, is like, this is how we want to see our hearts. We want to be able to open our hearts up and live our passions, show our passions. We want to be able to live with an open heart. And in this analogy, with an openness to our inner garden, to show, what is inside of our inner garden. And the way that boundaries was described was that boundaries are so healthy, so that we can keep the gates to our heart, to our inner garden open, so that we don't have to have them closed off and shut up because we don't, because the outside world is untrustworthy to come in and respect our garden. Maybe we've lived a life where, we've just experienced that the outside world does not respect our inner garden, and so we have to protect. And boundaries, when we get down to it, boundaries help us not to protect ourselves, and I'll talk about this in a moment, because there's a difference between boundaries and barricades. But boundaries help us to live with an open heart, to live with our hearts open, okay, and then and inviting and allowing people to come in and see, and actually allowing ourselves more so to be seen, to put ourselves out there and live our passions. And boundaries are there so that when someone in our lives, is coming a little too, is coming either a little too close to somewhere that's, they shouldn't be, or is not operating in a way that is an integrity for us in our garden, is not behaving in a way that we would, like or expect in our garden. A boundary is something that we can communicate to teach people about how our garden operates. So that's what a boundary is. It is something that allows us to live with a more open heart, allows us to be more open to the world, and the word I'm avoiding using, but also I want to use, it allows us to protect our energy, but it doesn't barricade us off. It allows us to protect ourselves from an open place, rather than protecting ourselves from a closed off place. So why boundaries is important, I may have already touched on this, and you may have already picked up a few things here and there. They teach what they teach others in our life, and they teach us about what we're available for. They show others how far we're willing to go, and how far they need to come, right? So another way that it's described is, it shows people, it teaches people where we end and they begin, right? So there's things called expectations as well. These are funny things, and we are messy as human beings. And so boundaries is just one part of this puzzle, where we can build resilience to live and lead with an openness in life. Because at the end of the day, when we lived from a closed place, we only cheating ourselves, because we are closing in our passions, we are closing in our gifts, we are closing in our wisdom, we are closing ourselves off to joy and, yes, pain. We are closing ourselves off to living. And that's why I say we are only cheating ourselves when we live closed lives. So boundaries teach people how we want to be treated. Teach ourselves what we're available for and what we're not. Okay. And I'm going to move into the how in a moment, about how you can recognize these boundaries and how you can communicate them, and give you a bit of structure. Yeah, boundaries are, again, they are in place to protect our openness. So let's just talk about that for a moment. When boundaries become barricades or bricks, right? Bricks are part of a barricade that keep people out. That's coming from fear that something or someone is going to get into our precious garden that we're trying to close off and protect ourselves from. when boundaries are communicated in a way that that there's fear behind them, that we're actually trying to build a barricade and keep people out, the boundary can be quite harsh, right? And we want to remember that we're communicating boundaries to keep ourselves open, but also protecting ourselves from, protecting ourselves and our energy, in a way that we can keep our heart open. It's like you're sitting there and you're going, I want to keep this garden open. I want people to observe this garden. I want people to smell the beautiful scents that come from this garden. I want people to see me and to observe and to experience me, and don't be picking all them flowers for free, and that's not how, you don't ride your motorbike in my garden. It's the and, like, I want to live open, and I know how to call it when things in my garden aren't going, the way respectfully, right? So we just want to be mindful of where sometimes, like, I've seen boundaries coming from a place of, like, they're quite harsh, and it's like, are we communicating? Are we communicating to keep ourselves open, or are we a bit, are we keeping people out? That's not for me to speak on. Like, I know I have done that, like when I don't want to look at something, or, well, yeah, I guess it's all, I guess back then I was a little bit more, like, analytical about what a boundary could be, but I think just in making this video, I'm like, don't be too analytical of what your boundaries look like. Just know that, if you get the general gist of they're here to keep our hearts open, I think you can guide yourself from there. So let's move into how you will recognize if a boundary is needed. Your body will tell you. So it may look like somebody asking something of you, or you're in a situation that feels extremely uncomfortable. You will get the feedback in your body, that this is not for you. Like, it's like there's somebody coming in to your garden and, like, rocking it up on a motorbike. It will feel like this in your body. So the first thing is to recognize that feeling, to recognize when someone is either overstepping or asking something of you that you're not available for, or you're in a situation that is not in alignment with you, is to recognize that situation, those feelings, recognize them, and don't just shrug them off. So often people can just be like, oh, and just do what everyone else is doing, or going with it, or, yeah, like, dismissing the feelings, that the feedback that is coming up in the body. So recognize it, feel it, and then if you need to, like, even if it looks like, hey, I'm just going to go to the bathroom and process this, the next step is to process it, like, wherever and however you need to, whether you just need to step away for a minute and have a think about, like, is this correct? Like, is this for me? Am I available for this? Like, is this appropriate? Process, have a think about the situation in order for you to know how to communicate. And that's really the important step. Is at the end, the third step is to communicate, right? So if something is not in alignment with you, if you are not available for something you're being asked of, if someone is coming is overstepping, then the next piece is to come back from where you've processed, if you need time to process, and then communicate in the best way you can, to stick up for and to communicate what you're here for, what you're available for. That takes practice. You may need a process, you may not. I had an example the other day that I did a reel on, and I did a reel on Instagram where, you know, I logged onto my computer and I saw this message from, you know, from a manager, and I didn't need to process nothing. My body gave me the feedback that it was like, no, we're not available for this. It's not ecological. And I'm just going to run you through processing it through an ecological filter. I'll tell you what that means. It means, you know, to be ecological, ecology is like good for you, good for others, and good for the greater good. And what I do when I run a situation through my, you could call it like my measure of ecology, is I ask, you know, if I communicate this boundary, is it correct for me? Is it correct and good for me? Is it correct and good for the other? Is it correct and good for the greater good? And one of the more extreme sides of the questions that I asked is, you know, if someone I loved was in this situation and felt this way, would I communicate this boundary on their behalf? And if the answer is yes, then it's like, well, why, you know, why am I hesitating to communicate it on my own behalf? And generally that's enough for me to go, you know what? And I find the words to communicate. So this example was, I was at my computer, I saw this very unreasonable request, right? It was unreasonable and I wasn't going to do it. And so I was like, that's good for me because I'm protecting my energy. It's good for this other person so that they know that they are out of their mind, like they need to get some structure or say no to someone else, or, you know, have some boundaries of their own. It's going to be good for them. And is it good for the greater good? Yes, because then maybe this person who's responsible for scheduling all these things will wake up and realize that, you know, if I'm feeling this way, there's probably others as well, and maybe this behavior can stop. So our boundaries are teachers, and that's exactly what I did. And there was an apology, there was some awareness, and yeah, there was some teaching about what I'm, you know, how to treat me and also others, right? So don't be afraid of communicating boundaries, although they can be some of the scariest things that you could ever communicate. With practice, they become they make more sense. I won't say they'll become easier because they don't, but they make more sense to honor each and every time that we do them. So I'm going to leave that there. If you have any questions, you know, leave them below. If it's like a burning question, find me on Instagram, message me. Yeah, find my email me. Yeah, find a way to find me to answer the question. If you have a burning question, I just don't know how often I'll be on YouTube to, you know, respond, but I will do my best. But I am quite active over on Instagram. Cool. So I'll leave it there, and thanks for tuning in.